All right, we have a phenomenal guest today. We have Coach Becker from Hand High School, football coach there. Tremendous amount of success at Hand High School. That's a place I played at the University of Connecticut. That's a place in Connecticut that's always had some really, really good players come out of there. Have great tradition, and it's a fantastic program. And Coach is one of our next guests in the long line of guys that have come around from applying their own version of Feed the Cats system, focused on sprint based football and speed development, being at the forefront of everything that they do in order to help get their team better, and speed being at the forefront of hopefully having great success. So it's great to have Coach on to talk more about that. Obviously, I have my co-host here, Coach Depascale, as well. He has been the what's the best word for this, Derek? He has been the researcher responsible for finding every one of Tony guys that work with Tony Holler and affiliated, and we've been talking to them, and myself as a guy who coached track for a long time, ran track and obviously played football at Division I level. This stuff is it's kind of stuff that I've talked about a long time ago. It's amazing to see it applied greatly into a system that you have a lot of disciples that are starting to talk about. It's not just like a couple of guys on a hill. So it's really, really great. So, Coach, it's great to have you on.
I'm honored, fellas. First of all, just grateful to be with you guys. I know I'm talking to you deep in the heart of Jersey. We're up here in Connecticut. We're not quite as good as Jersey football, but we're doing our best. My why, I coach to help boys become authentic men who will impact the world for good, who will show up big in their communities. I'm an imperfect person, and I'm an imperfect coach. I'm always striving to get better and learn. And the wisdom of Tony Holler and the Track Football Consortium has helped me do that.
There's no doubt about it. And how did you kind of get affiliated with them and start kind of evolving towards what they were doing?
That's a great question. For me, I was coaching a smaller school, trying to turn around a struggling program. It was summer of 2018. I was mowing the lawn. I listened to Run the Power podcast, and I heard Tony speak, and it kind of blew my doors off. He helped me understand the difference between speed work and conditioning. In the most simple terms, that's the main realization I had, was that speed was a skill I could train and was completely separate from the shape a kid needs to be in to play football. So I've coached this is year 25. I believe that coaching is men's work. I believe that football is an opportunity for boys to initiate safely into their warrior archetype. It is a rite of passage. I'm blessed every day. You mentioned Hand High School, Madison, Connecticut. We're super blessed. We have one of the best programs in the Northeast. We have a national blue ribbon high school. We've won 75% of our games over 55 years, and including 14 state championships. So I'm so blessed to lead that flock.
What was it about the programs when you were listening on that Run the Power podcast? Was it a podcast or was it a clinic? When you were listening to it, what was it about what he talked about that really resonated with you? And this was, you said this was 2018. So also, what were you doing beforehand that you thought you really needed to change?
So before that, I was doing stuff that Coach Holler would say makes you slow. My focus was solely on conditioning. I did not separate out speed work from conditioning. Coach Holler helped me understand that they're two distinct things. You're training two completely different energy systems. So essentially, our goal with our team is to build the fastest, toughest football team possible. To do that, we run fast, we lift heavy, we jump high, we jump far. Those are all metrics that we track constantly. Coach Holler helped me recognize that speed is the most important attribute on any athletic field. Simply put, being faster makes you better. No matter the sport, no matter the position, being faster makes you better. Speed on a football field creates space, the ability to close space or open space, creates time. If you're a linebacker and you're faster, you have a millisecond further to read a play before you have to react. So faster is space in a game of inches. If I can increase my player max velocity, then I'm also increasing their sub-max velocity. So 2 miles per hour in the first quarter is 2 miles per hour in the fourth quarter. So big principles that Tony helped me understand. Number one, you got to run fast to get fast. You got to sprint to get fast. And that is in a fresh state, 2 to 3 times a week with a full recovery. He says sprint as fast as possible, as often as possible, staying as fresh as possible. 4 to 6 seconds is true speed work with a full recovery. You know, I grew up with no walking on a football field. Speed work, they got to walk back. Speed work, they got to recover, because your goal is the highest output possible. It's not conditioning. If you do that consistently, speed will improve over time. Tony always says speed grows like a tree, grows slowly. So we record, rank, and publish, and we see, I have 6 years now, the data showing a kid's speed improve through consistent application of these principles.
I'll tell you a funny quick story, a couple quick stories that I think you'll find interesting. Probably about, I think it was about, now it's almost 13 years, like 12 and a half years ago. I coached the team that went to the state championship, but on the way there, we were a team that had never had a great program. We built it up. We went to state championship. We had like a great run there. But one of the most interesting things was we played a team that was heavily favored over us in the semifinals, and we blew their doors off. But I knew we were going to blow their doors off when they came. The first play of the game, they were a big physical, athletic team. They had a quarterback that went and played receiver at Pittsburgh, big time Division I athlete, and he ran option. First drive of the game, took it 60 yards for a touchdown. They were up 7-0. And but I knew we were going to win the game, because you know what they did every single play with their quarterback? The quarterback ran to the sidelines to get the play. He jogged to the sideline, got the play, ran back. He ran so many half-speed jogs on his way to get the play back and in that I knew there was no way over the course of the game that he was their main ball carrier too, that he was going to be able to do that. I mean, the kid would have had to have been Superman, you know, and he was obviously a specimen in the fact that he was going to play Division I receiver, you know, at Pittsburgh. So I knew we were going to win that game because we ran no huddle offense, and once the play ended, everybody just got in line and they're set and waited for the play, you know, and then we went, and the kid was playing offense and defense. There's no way he could make. So the best player just got worn down, and we were up big at halftime, and he was just worn out. And actually, after halftime, believe it or not, they had a resurgence because that kid had 20 minutes to recover. And they actually, you know what I mean? And then he could play a little bit, but then he got, you know, worn out again. But it's interesting because a lot of these things that you think about as a coach, of things you see other people do and things you've done yourself, you're like, oh my goodness, like this is not a good idea. Like this really, and Tony really opened my eyes up to like things that you had done that were correct, like things that you've done in the past. You're like, oh wow, I was really doing something like that. I'll tell a story a little bit later about, and Derek knows this guy, Anthony Pomo, but I'll tell a story about him. But and then we did things we were doing and things that we were doing incorrect, like too much conditioning, too much running, and those kind of things. Talk about as you started to implement it, like what were like some of the aha things for you, like those moments where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like I get it now.
Well, most importantly, it was seeing the data the results are data driven, seeing the data support what Tony was saying, and then seeing the results on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So I've followed his teachings for 5 seasons. We've averaged 8 wins a season for 5 seasons, including 3 conference championships and 1 state championship. I have speed data on, probably 150 kids now showing their speed improve, and then that translates on the field to success. That is a part of our program. Our program is proud. We expect to win. We expect to be champions. I stand on the shoulders of giants. Speed training is one more piece of that program that helps us become the most athletic we can be on Friday nights.
What were some of the improvements you've seen when you started tracking from the time you start like winter work, working out in the wintertime and training then to the time they come into their season? What are some of the improvements that you're seeing on your athletes?
So the goal is big and fast. We train speed first. We lift heavy, in the weight room. We lift heavy. We're always trying to recruit our fast twitch fibers. We're majoring in the majors. We're deadlift. We're clean. We're bench. We're squat.
Right.
The main improvements we see in kids is the translation of the field is in speed and power. Their ability to express explosive power is something that when I started doing this, I saw it right away on film, and it measured out in wins and losses.
Yeah, definitely.
From a it's interesting because like I've seen Tony's program and Cool's program, and you posted some of the different kind of ways that they talk about it. Are there some differences that you've seen between some of the guys and how they kind of apply things? And is there a difference between that maybe you're applying some things? Because I saw Tony on a recent he just did something with Kula. I don't know if it was a couple of days ago or what, but came to my feed. And but before that, he was in a group, and they were talking about training and lifting, and he was talking about like squatting and heavy lifting, and how you have to have there's a balance there because if you they're talking about structurally with like the spine and trying to eliminate stiffness and all those kind of things, how that could affect you as an athlete. How do you apply because that's such a hard thing. Because in football, you're trying to get stronger, especially your offensive lineman, right?
Right.
And then your skill guys, you want to make sure that you're balancing the speed with obviously getting stronger. What are some of the things that like kind of core things that you try to stay to keep your guys developing?
So in the weight room, Brian Kula is my main influence.
Okay.
As you guys know, is a famous football track coach from Colorado. Most prominently, he's known as Christian McCaffrey's coach.
Right.
He's a track football consortium legend. His whole philosophy is that the weight room needs to enhance what we're doing on a track to make a kid faster. I am completely in his camp because I have to get my kids into hypertrophy. I have to focus on getting them bigger and stronger because they're adolescent boys, so we need to put weight on them. In order to do that, we're going to focus on our core lifts. Brian Kula is a huge deadlift fan. The hex bar deadlift is my favorite lift. In my opinion, it's all the benefits of a squat, hitting 251 lower body muscles plus posterior chain development. So you're developing everything through your core, through your back, right up to the base of your skull, working your grip strength, your traps. And when we hit heavy deadlifts, we're releasing our own anabolic hormones, our testosterone, our HG1. We're forcing our body into that anabolic state. We track mass specific force, which is a metric that comes from Barry Ross, who wrote Underground Secrets of Faster Running. That is your hex bar deadlift divided by your body weight.
Yep. Yep.
1.5 is good. 2 times your body weight is great. 2.5 is elite, and anything over 3 is world class. We've had a few kids deadlifting 3 times their body weight, and they are by far the most explosive, twitchy kids we have.
Was that the study where they did the they used some of the Olympics female sprinters, and they were able to test like how much higher they were with the hex bar lift relative to what their body weight and their speed, and then they were able to calculate their sprinter speed from that. I think that was the thing, because I remember when I was. Is that right? Am I right on that, or is I'm not?
Yeah, Barry Ross in his book found that the greatest correlation from the weight room to pure speed was the hex bar deadlift.
Derek, you remember when I said that back when we were at RBR? I used to tell that to our strength coach.
That was always a little bit of a coach. When we took over this program, Coach, we were all excited, right? Great weight room. They had a strength and conditioning coach on staff, just another piece to add to it. We walked in there and we're looking at the workout, and we're starting to question some things because we're not seeing the main big lifts, right, that we were expected to see. So it was always kind of a back and forth of I think we need to lift heavier to get better. So Coach really kind of hammered that one home when we went in there. It sure as hell wasn't on the board when we first walked in.
I was like, we have to hex bar. Like, there's an actual study. He did look up the study. I remember that, but it's funny because I saw that. He did
his research eventually.
I found it because I was an NFL agent at the time, and we would research training facilities like Tony Villani was one of the great. I used to send my guys, this guy Kavanaugh down in Virginia, is very good. And there was a guy out in California that had a lot of the higher, that had taken some guys away from exos, had a lot of these higher draft guys. I can't remember where he was, and he had a whole podcast on this exact thing that you're talking about, and that's how I saw it. And he was having great results for the combine for his guys in 40. And then I was like, this is something that makes a lot of sense. So, and it started seeing it like on the guys that we had that were the fastest guys, and that were also now doing the hex bar lift. When we eventually did implement it, like the guy with Chamberlain was one of the guys, Derek, who was really did a lot of weight on his hex bar lift, and he was buck 90
by far one of our best athletes.
Yep, he was our most explosive athlete, and ended up being our best player. So that's really interesting, really, really interesting.
I think, Coach, Dave, let me just add, I want to just say what that, Coach. I think that's really what kind of can start to, because look, every time we talk to guys that have implemented this system and whatnot, and because the majority of just football at this level in general is so, I don't want to say old school, but everybody does it the way they were coached, right? And some of the stuff that you're now implementing is, to some people, oh, wow, type of like, what are we doing? Because nobody really understands it. I think the one thing that really hammers all of this stuff home is record, rank, publish, right? Yeah. When you're putting out now that data, all of those things that are now on paper, and you can actually see the improvements. And, when you can kind of, it's just like nothing's real until you write it down, right? I tell my players all the time, you can tell me something, buddy, but until I see it on a piece of paper, it's what it is. So I think that's the biggest part of the whole thing, is when you can now have, those naysayers, and then you can say, look, here's the data, right? And then the wins and losses take care of itself. This championship, it comes off of this, right? It's not, something that's out there, Harry Potter, I like to call it. It's not there, right? It's real. I think that's one of the most important things. And every single, guy that has now implemented it has had to go through that a little bit, but always can fall back on, here's the data.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So just to give you a ballpark, our training, we work hard 3 days a week. We love the work. It's a part of our culture. We embrace it. We find joy in it. I'm right there with them. We start on the field. We start with RPR. if RPR is magic, I believe in it. If you don't know what it is, check it out. We do zone 1 as a team. Then we do Tony Holler's atomic warm-up, which is a nice blend of plyometrics.
It's a great warm-up.
Some formation, some running form drills, promoting high knee, high toe, frontside mechanics, all that stuff. Building balance and rigidity. Then, Monday is our linear speed day. We work straight line speed. I time fly 10. I time takeoff. I time 40. I use a free lap. There's no perfect system, but free lap works for us.
Is that what you use, free lap, Coach? Yeah, we implement, because we started to implement this in our high school program this year, because our indoor and outdoor track coach is actually our freshman football coach. So he's kind of taken this and ran with it. And we use free lap. Yeah, and it's been pretty good. Because I'm always curious as to what type of technology everybody uses, because that record, rank, and publish, you got to get those times and be able to do it. So so free lap, awesome.
No doubt. And then Wednesday is our curve sprint day. It's our COD, change of direction day. So we work some shuttles, we work some L drill, we run some curves. Friday we do Scott Leach's Gridiron Warrior program that comes out of University of Rhode Island, which is all about navigating open field space. And then we get in the weight room. We have a great strength and conditioning coach, Mike Marino. We major in the majors. We bench, we squat, we clean, we deadlift. And we combine those with plyos in the weight room to get a bit of a French contrast, whether that's a banjo jump, drop jump, a box jump, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The metrics we track 40, we track fly 10, 30-yard run-in. We track first 10 with a 5-yard run-in, broad jump, vertical jump. We track roll 90, which is a neat change of direction metric where they got a 5-yard run-in, taking 90-degree cut, 5-yard run out. And then in the weight room, we track bench, squat, clean, and deadlift.
Is that a Mark Hoover?
Yeah. It's a great little metric, and the kids have fun with it.
Yeah, we had Mark on. I think 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about. He was awesome. He's great.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
So the drill where you run in and you go back in a different direction. What? Explain that drill real quick. So the
roll 90, coach. Is that what you're?
Yeah, roll 90. Roll 90.
So set up my free lap cone on the 5-yard line. I put a cone on the 10, and then I set up my other free lap cone 5 yards to the right of the cone. The kids have a 5-yard run in. They have to bend it around the midpoint, the cone, 90-degree cut, and then they run out of the drill. And
so it's like the NFL drill, like what they have the time for, kind of similar, but with a roll in.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just measuring a change of direction, a 90-degree cut, and it's a fun drill. The kids, kids
like it.
They want to beat their best number. They want to beat each other, and it's fun.
Well, I think that's part of the record rank thing too, right? I mean, that creates competition in itself. I mean, nobody wants to see their name at the bottom of a list. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we're doing, and that's a sign of a culture within a program that maybe at the beginning you have to kind of, build that and get that going a little bit where, now guys, look, like it doesn't matter what, like we're going to time stuff and we're going to post it so everybody sees it. And that I think adds a healthy level of competition to these guys that, everything kind of matters, right? Everything we're doing.
And we're incredibly blessed. At Hand High School, we have a program where kids want to be elite. They want to become the best. They make the choice to become the best version of themselves. And that goes right back to Larry Ciotti, who started our program in 1970. And that's my most important job, is upholding that culture, keeping that flame burning.
No doubt about it. I was thinking, Derek, and this is interesting. So when kind of in North Jersey, when the whole speed revolution happened with all, DeFranco, when I was running, obviously Parisi was the first, right? And then when I started running the combines around the country, we were timing everybody, and we had built that up, and we were running like 100+ events, 20,000 kids. What was interesting was everybody was into getting the times, and there was kind of a lot of training facilities that started to crop up. But what happened was, obviously, there weren't enough educated people in developing speed, because then the backlash on the times and stuff, where people didn't want to be timed anymore because they didn't know how to train so it was kind of as anything would, it was weeding out obviously the best guys versus the rest. But what was interesting was there was backlash from trainers because of what you guys apply now with Feed the Cats, which is so good because you record, rank, and publish, and it's accurate. You know exactly what your guys are running and what their times are and what their jumps are. And when we kind of started doing that, there's the skyrocket and the kind of fall. The trainers were telling them times because they were trying to get them to re-up their training with them, but it wasn't accurate, right? So it wasn't accurate, right? So I think that's what's so great about what you guys are doing, and emphasizing it. Really, the emphasis is really the key part. The record, rank, publish is that the accuracy of what your time is, and this is where free lap and those things are important. The accuracy of what your time is so critical to see what your development is, so you know exactly where you are, okay, and not upset about what your time is, but you know what your time actually is, so you know how to develop it over time. And I think that's a mindset that you guys are all shifting in the athletes one by one is really, really important, is the development side of it's not where you're at right now, being scared of the clock, right? People were scared of the clock.
Absolutely.
Literally scared of the clock. Like I remember it, it was a thing. People were scared of the clock. What you're teaching them is not to fear the clock, is to understand where you are to help you get to where you want to get to, right? And talk about that part, because linemen, for example, right? They're probably the ones who fear the clock the most, right?
Yeah. Well, the message is always to be your best, to be better than you were yesterday. You're only competing. Right. So our data is in-house data. Our free lab system is what we use. Other timing systems certainly, maybe have some discrepancies. You can find no shortage of online arguments about what timing system is best and what.
Oh, of course.
So what we do is we time and create in-house data that we use to help our kids progress forward as athletes. I'm always super clear with exactly how we time things.
Right.
So coaches know what they're getting. But every coach, when you go to a showcase, is going to, every school is going to time kids with their own metrics.
Absolutely.
Some are still hand timing. You go to.
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely, coach. I mean, look, you go to a college camp, right? Not to cut you off, coach, but you go to a college camp where, these guys, they're still out there with the, the finger on the trigger, man. Like, hey, watch. And it's like, guys, like, this is the, these systems that are now developing. It's why, like I said, I always ask guys, what they use and what works best for everybody, and that free lap thing, we can use it across the board. Use it for football. We can use it for indoor track. Any of the sports that you need to time something for, like, hey, here you go. It's interesting though to see how guys use different systems and whatnot.
GPS ones, the Titan, the Catapult, those most accurate snapshots. My free lap gives you a fly 10. As I understand, the Titan, the Catapult, it's more it's like a 5 yard, so you get it'll hit a higher number.
Right.
Yeah, the Titan is really starting to come up, I think, and obviously, endorsing Tony's sprint-based football podcast, they're getting a lot more metrics when it comes to actual football, stuff like that. But Catapult was the first one to come out with it, and it kind of just goes from there in terms of, what everybody could use, what everybody could afford. But I think that is so pivotal for guys to figure out that way to get the most accurate time possible, so that these guys are getting really the best data they possibly can,
And those are the metrics that coaches speak. So I'm a huge into recruiting. It's a huge part of my job. If I can give coaches tangible electronic metrics, that will paint a clearer picture of any prospect.
Right. Right. Because look, I went to this trainer and he timed my 40 and I ran a 4.4. It's like, great. Then I get you on the watch and it's a 4.7. It's like, what are we doing, fellas? You know what I mean? So to get that across the board, college coaches are going to look for that. How did you time this 40? What did you use? What did you do? It's all a part of the bigger picture. Yeah.
We were just at Yale for a coach's clinic. Yale is an amazing program in the Northeast. I'm sure you guys are familiar. Tony Reno is one of the best coaches I've ever been around. They use broad jump as one of their main recruiting metrics. And broad jump is a measure of explosive power, and for any athlete. So I want to touch on conditioning because that's a big thing. You know, one of the volatile pieces of the whole feed the cats philosophy is what about conditioning? Big picture. Conditioning should look like football. You know, we're running off of the ATP energy system. That is adenosine triphosphate. That is the chemical that our bodies use to fuel explosive motions under 10 seconds. So football plays are 4 to 6 seconds, bursts of max effort. That is a result of the ATP energy system. So I believe that any conditioning that we should do or that we do must look like the game of football. And I discovered something a few years ago. It came to us from William and Mary into the Track Football Consortium. Before that, it came from rugby, I believe South Africa or maybe New Zealand. And I know it is the tribe test. Tribe test is every player's on the goal line. I'm standing on the 20. My whistle blows. My clock starts. I got 6 seconds on the clock. The kids are sprinting to the 20. They're touching it. They're sprinting back to the goal line. My second whistle happens at 6 seconds. That simulates a football play. After that second whistle, they are between plays. They are recovering. Their hands are on their hips. They're walking back to the line. They're high-fiving each other. They're getting ready for the next play. 30-second rest, just like in a football play. Next whistle blows. 6 seconds to the 20 and back. And we do that 6, 8, 12 times to simulate a drive. I believe that is the best conditioning I can give my guys short of a well-run football practice. For 20 years, I've been influenced by Tony Franklin, who says that a well-run football practice where you're repping 3 plays a minute will condition your guys to the demands of the football game.
I heard you say that on Tony's podcast, Coach, the 3 plays a minute. I told Dave last week, I told him none of those things. It's so funny because back when we were at, a previous school, Dave's practices are always up tempo, always on the move, always on the go, right? Everything we're doing, when it comes to our plays and whatnot, in terms of how many can we get in a certain time frame. That was kind of always a method of how we kind of did things. So, and I think that's one of the most underrated things that coaches, or maybe word it a different way, where coaches just overlook how, what you have to do per play, right? Maximum effort for 6 to 7 seconds, the average time of a football play, with a 30-second break. And then you go back and do it again. So what you're doing in between that, you're resting, you're recovering, right? You're not jogging to the sideline to get a play, right? Receivers flip-flopping sides to kind of get into a different formation. All of those things now need to be taken into account so that your guys are now full go, ready to go next play. And I think that the best way to do that is you have to mimic it in practice, which is extremely difficult, right? Coaches struggle with that all the time, but you have to pay attention to it.
Right. And that's being efficient. That's being on the clock. That's being well-structured, well-planned out. And I believe that if you're practicing at that pace, your kids are going to be ready for the demands of the game.
Damn right.
Absolutely. And the
last thing we do for conditioning, Tony Holler talks about his 23-second drill, which is a track drill that they do. Basically, the kids are on their behind.
The 4 milers. Yeah.
We do once a week during the summer. We do what he calls a come to Jesus workout. It is old school. We run something called man make. I run it with them. That is 1000s, 880s, 660s, 440s, 220s. Lombardi called them Green Bays. We do that together, and we do that so we know that we can. It's a practicing adversity. Again, Tony Reno from Yale says we do hard things so we can do hard things. It helps us find our edge, and it helps us get tighter together. I mean, nothing bonds us like running man makers together on a Friday morning in the summer. You always got to be smart with stuff like that. There's plenty of example coaches, myself included, over the years, doing stuff and not being safe. The best ability for any kid is availability. So safety always number one when you're training kids.
Well, what's the tribe test?
Tribe test.
Yeah.
One more time. Tribe test. Everybody's on the goal line. I'm on the 20. Whistle blows. My clock starts. Kids are sprinting to the 20. They touch it. They run back to the goal line. My second whistle happens at 6 seconds.
Right.
All right. Our fastest kids will get all the way there and back. Mids will get there and back to the 10. The slowest kids will get to the 20 and maybe back to the 15. After my second whistle, they have 30 seconds to recover. Just like a football play, they get back on the line. I give them a 5-second countdown. Whistle blows, second rep, 6 second sprint to the 20 and back, and repeat that sequence. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
It's when I was my freshman year going into Sacred Heart, right? Our conditioning test was 110s, right? We had to do 110s for time. And it was the same type of, we've all done it, whether it was a 300 shuttle, whether it was 110s, and look, skills got to be this time, mids this time, bigs this time. And it was, 110. Okay. Clock. Now you have 45 seconds before you're ripping your next one, right? So the faster you got there, the more recovery time you had. I mean, unbelievable. Like, talk about a welcome to college football moment for me, myself, who was, look, I trained all summer. I worked all summer. I practiced the 110s, and it was still that. I mean, guys were just the things that we've done in the past, and you kind of look back at it, you're like, wow, I really did that. I mean, it's crazy.
I've done them both as a player and as a coach. As a player and a coach, 300 shuttles, 110s, full field gassers, half gassers. I've done them all as a player and a coach. I think I've evolved. I think I've grown. I want my conditioning to look like football. I want it to be high. I want it to be 95% of their max speed or faster. I want to stack anaerobic work to create a high sprint capacity and speed reserve.
That's really interesting. A thing I learned, and Derek knows him because I don't know if you played against him, but he was in the same. We were in the same group when I was coaching. We had this kid, Anthony Pomo, was our quarterback. Was a bullet. He was the state 100-meter champ, and held the school record as well in the high hurdles. So he was 13.9 high hurdler, 10 high 10s FAT in the 100. And went on to run track at UConn, actually.
Stud.
Phenomenal football player. He's just about $155, you know what I mean, at 5'9". Yeah. But one of the things I learned from him was he was a 100-meter state champ. He never trained for the 100. And I'll tell you what's interesting. He was a jumper, so he was a 23-foot long jumper. And 46 foot, high 45s in the triple jump, even though we rarely trained him in the triple jump, but just because we thought it took too much toll on him because of the 3 jumps, right? He basically trained most of the time long jump, which is basically like 10 to 15 yard sprints to getting, to get to a max velocity, to be able to work on his explosion from the long jump and getting his timing right from there. And he worked on hurdling in his start and his hurdling. And he did primarily that. And what was interesting about it is that he never ran like worked out with the 200 or anything like that? And this is in the 2000. Derek, what year did you graduate high school? It was 2000.
This would be 2003 season, 2004 so for him it would be 2004.
Yeah, it'd be 2004. So he didn't have that kind of capacity, so we never trained him that way, right? And he just trained speed. When we had to go run the Penn relays, he had never run a 400. He ran 51. Okay, now he was hurting, right? He was hurting, but he ran a 51 400 without ever training for the 400 ever. Meaning he had never trained. I don't think he ever did more than maybe a 120 in any workout ever, right? And was a 22.9 200 guy. Obviously, it doesn't match up to his 100 because he didn't do any of these 23-second workouts or anything because he just did. But what it taught me was, man, a kid that's twitchy like that and has those kind of just keep doubling down on what he does well, and the rest would take care of himself. And he was a dominant football player in high school and could have played in college. He just took a scholarship for track. But it taught me that this doubling down on the speed was the most important thing because he won the 100-meter dash without ever training for the 100. He was the state champion 100-meter dash. What does that tell you?
That's amazing. It shows you the global benefits of speed training.
It's exactly right because
100%.
It applied without ever having to do any other things. So it's really interesting. What do you think is next? What do you think are some of the things? So we understand RPR pretty well. I started applying it and doing it, and we're trying to. What do you think is next on the horizon that is starting to be worked on that you think is going to be important in speed development?
And controlling that volume is a forefront. We played around with Catapult. Every college team now is wearing Titan or Catapult, and they're trying to make sense of the data that provides. You need a whole staff of guys or gals to do that work.
Right.
But my goal ultimately is finding the sweet spot that prepares my guys enough and gets them ready to be at their best on Friday night. So I think that understanding those metrics from a scientific level and applying them to the practice field that's my next horizon.
Very cool. Very cool. Coach, I can't thank you enough for coming on. Really, really great having you on.
Appreciate it, Coach.
You're at the forefront of changing the way a lot of people think about things, and it's great to see.
Thank you, guys. God bless.
All right,
Coach, continued success. We'll talk. Thank you.
All right, bye. All right, good stuff. That's
a lot of wins, dude.
Yeah, Hand High School's in Connecticut. I believe it's right along the water there.
I was just going to ask you, where's it located? Is it by Yale?
I think it's Fairfield County. Yeah, I think it's they got a couple bucks there, that town. So,
listen, it's the biggest thing to me.
They had a great linebacker there. Where was I at a party? I was at a party there. I was actually at a party with Nicole. One of her friends got married or something, and
dude,
crazy enough, I was in a conversation with someone. There was a guy that played at UConn. Obviously, he's much younger than me. Somebody's son was a superstar at UConn, or cousin or something, and he was a linebacker, and he went to Hand High School. It was Madison. When he said Madison, I'm pretty sure Madison's near the water or on the water.
The free lap cone stuff, right? Like when they're talking about how do you measure this, right? And that's like my biggest, because the biggest gripe, right? Think about it. When we ever get 40 times, the first thing we say, well, how is it timed, right? Because Dad's sitting out there with a stopwatch, all this kind of shit, right? Oh, it was laser timed. Oh, it was this. Oh, it was that. The free lap cones, they're great, right? Because the data actually comes. But look, any way you want to split it, for the program, like a high school program, this is really an investment that you have to be in on if you really want to get this types of stuff. You know what I mean? When you're talking, the Titan GPSs or the catapults, like you really got to be on board because you're spending a good amount of coin, from your budget to really kind of go with it. And it better be justified to that AD. Damn right. You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, dude, I need these. But what I think some people get caught up in is not every player needs to wear it. Right? You could do a little bit at a time, right?
Yeah.
So get a couple here, a couple this year, a couple that year. And if you factor it in, before you know it, you'll have a whole bunch of, stuff that you're kind of doing, which to me, ultimately, I mean, obviously I'm drinking Kool-Aid, big time, but to me, it looks like a hell of a great return on the investment. So these guys are getting legit data. And now when a college coach comes in, right? Hey man, like this is the time. This is their miles per hour. Like, you have that firm data that this guy's not wondering, hey, did, trainer whoever with a stopwatch out there time this, or was it a real legit bona fide time?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that for years and years and years and years, football coaches wanted their kids to run track, but football coaches don't really want to listen to what track coaches are saying. I mean, is that the best way to put it? So
I think look, we always know, and we talk about it all the time. The football coach is usually, or at least is always the guy with the biggest ego in the building, right? Like the football coach is separate from everybody else. You know what I mean? Like the guys know the name of the football coach. I mean, to me, if you're not in Saddlebrook, like how many guys know who the head track coach is?
Right. So it's
and I don't mean to downplay track by any means.
No,
right? But those guys never wanted, even though it was such a benefit if you and your track coach are, those guys, right? But look, there was always a football coach, an assistant football coach who was an assistant track coach, right? There's always one of those guys, right? But does the head coach want to listen to the assistant track coach? Not so much, right? Whereas if we embrace that and all work together with this, like, wow, right? Like because track was never even, pushed on any of us, in those terms. But to see the correlation and how much each of you can benefit from, having football players run track guys do football, and you talk like that's probably one of the biggest, eye-opening things working, with you from the jump was always, hey, track, you know what I mean? Like track times, this time, that time, right? It's why I'm always like, hey, this guy ran this. Is that good? You know what I mean? Or Siraj, who we've had on up in Mount Olive, who does a great job with his program. Hey, Siraj, like, this kid's a freshman. He ran this in the 400 hurdles. Like, oh, damn, dude, that's pretty good. Or I love that the metric, right? The broad jump, talked about that a little bit, how that metric for the explosiveness, it's awesome. Right?
Oh, like, yeah.
It's such an awesome, because everybody's all 40s and shuttles, and it's like broad jump, dude. Like, boom.
One of the things I've seen from doing all the events that I did and all the years of like all that data.
Yeah.
If you're a skill guy and you're not broad jumping 9.6 or higher,
good luck.
You're limited. 9 feet is the minimum. Okay. But
we're talking college level, right? We're talking like next level or high level high school.
9.6 guys are all 9.6 broad or higher. Almost all. I mean, I don't, taking away like what is their, I don't know what their GPA is or any of that. I'm just talking athletically. Athletically, 9.6 or more, you're a Division I athlete. Okay. No. And then vertical jump. If you're, I would say the sweet spot is guarantee is probably 33 inches.
Yep.
I would say. So,
yep.
30. There are plenty of Division I athletes that are 31 inches, 30 inches in a vertical jump. Like everyone's like, 30 inch vertical. That's a big deal. Yes.
No. It is. But look,
the slam dunk,
vertical, you might not be dunking.
The slam dunk is 33 or more. The slam dunk. So I'll give you an example. Like, so when I went to the NFL, like when I did all the workouts, when I was out of
4 days and all that stuff.
at 200, now, like I had different workouts at different times, but at 234 pounds, at one workout I ran 4.56. Another one I ran 4.70. That's a wide range, right? So, okay, I was 234 pounds. Maybe my training, who knows? Okay, my vertical was 31. Okay, my broad jump was 9.10. All right. And at first they were like 10.10. I'm like, I know.
What was your broad jump? 9.10?
9.10 at 234 pounds. So at first the guy was like 10.10. I'm like, I wish, but I know it's not 10.10. Because if it's 10.10, you'd be drafting me in the first round. So
I think my longest broad jump was 8.9.
Right. And what did you weigh?
I was 5'8", probably 177.
So think about it. Like I didn't go to the pros, right? Like I only had offers to go in Canada.
I never vertical jumped over 20. I was a high 28, low 29. Like I could never jump, dude.
You probably didn't train either. You did probably. I mean, back then nobody. Even I didn't really specifically.
That was always my lowest measurable, dude. Was a vert. I could never jump. I just really was not. I was a 1 foot jumper. You know what I'm saying? In basketball, I could only like really scrape fingernails on the bottom of the rim. You know,
I could dunk. But it wasn't pretty.
Well, I always, and this is, you'll laugh at this, right? So obviously, I used to get so pissed because my elementary school gym teacher, right, used to always say, "Hey man, your old man used to be able to jump like crazy. And
really?
you ate your old man." And I used to get so pissed, dude, because my old man, he could never dunk because he couldn't palm the ball. His hands were too small,
right?
But he could dunk a tennis ball, right? And I couldn't even come to the rim. Like I couldn't even get that. And I used to take shit for that all the time. And it fired me up. But my old man was way faster than I ever was.
Right. It's an interesting thing because and this was post, right? So at 234 pounds, I feel like in high school, I was probably fat. I was smaller. I was lighter. But I definitely think because I went 21 feet in the long jump. I feel like I probably at least jumped that, if not farther.
Question.
We didn't work speed in college. You know what I mean? Like,
oh shit. I mean, listen, I just know that if I was, Coach Joffrey, really, that we've had on the show, kind of took over our strength program at Sacred Heart when we kind of got there, right? When I came in, because I came in with a new coach. He had just come in. He was kind of revamping the entire strength program as we came in. I remember I came in the best shape of my life, right? Like going into camp, I was in phenomenal shape, working with Mike Smith, like nonstop. I was explosive. I was the works, right? And I remember going in I was 5'8", 5'9"-ish, 196, right? Best shape. But I felt really, really strong, but I sure as hell didn't feel fast or twitchy, right? So Coach, and we talked about that. Like, Coach Joffrey sat down and said, "Well, how do you physically feel?" Right? And I said, "I don't feel like I could cover somebody if I need to. I feel like I could tackle somebody, but I sure as hell don't feel like I could cover somebody going down the field." He's like, "All right, well, let's tweak some things and do whatever." So we tweaked some things. I got down to like 187, 185-ish, and I felt
that was smart
on a whole different level. Right. And look, if it just played into my mental capacity, right? I felt so much better, right? Trying to do the things that I was being asked to do, weighing 186 or wherever that was, rather than 196. Like, I just felt too big.
And Tony's talked about this. The biggest mistake you can make, and I know this now, and I made this mistake myself, okay? And I didn't want to kind of go in on it, but I don't believe in trying to gain weight.
No.
Okay? I believe,
especially at the high school level, right? Because puberty still factors in, man. You know what I'm saying? It's just so different.
Yeah. Now listen. Now if you're a guard, okay, I get it. As you get you're in college, if you don't gain weight, you're a 260-pound guard. You're not going to
we got problems.
Yeah, you got to make. So I understand there's a balance to it, but if you're talking optimal speed, if you're talking skill player, okay, even linebacker, and I guess linebacker might be the borderline position.
Linebacker now, Dave. Linebacker now, you're a strong safety.
Yeah. So
and for what I was a borderline outside backer, right? Like I was an in the box safety. You know what I'm saying? Like,
which is why I would run at these guys directly because
I talked about it.
Like they made so I felt like I was the fastest my junior year.
You were probably the fastest linebacker.
Well, I was the fastest linebacker at 234 pounds, still running 4.6s. But
yeah, no doubt. Linebackers in your day, Dave.
I thought I was faster the year before I came back from my back injury where I was out.
Oh shit! You were like, you're not lifting heavy.
I was just sprinting. I was only 220 pounds, and I played that year, even though I was the fourth guy. Like I was the rotator, and then I became the starter. Right. But I played that year at 220. And I felt really, really fast. Okay,
dude, I'm telling you,
I wasn't as knowledgeable as it was the next year. So I was a better linebacker the next year. I was bigger, but if I had stayed, maybe if I just gained a couple pounds, like 225, maybe 220 is a little light in the ass. But if I was gonna instead of going to 230, I feel like that would have been a sweet spot. Like you have to find your sweet spot.
Right. And I think you need to also take into account, what are you being asked to do? Right. Like my junior year as a strong safety at Montclair, man, I was supposed to be taking on fullbacks and pulling guards and setting the edge and shit, dude. Like I had to bump up to, I was at 205 my junior year. I needed
up. You're worried about getting beat up.
I didn't want to be like you tell me I got to set an edge on a fucking pulling guard. Like I'm not about to hear the linebacker get pissed because he can't scrape over the top of me or turning this thing back in.
I think the question becomes, and I don't know if anybody knows this answer, is the optimization of what you're like. So should you have been 205 or should you have been 195? What is the speed that you're moving at? And also the size that you have that equates to being able to handle the role you're doing, right?
100%.
So you definitely couldn't be 160 in that role. And
no.
You couldn't be 225 in that role. Right?
I had dropped to, right? Because when I came back from Sacred Heart to go to Montclair, it was, hey, you're going to be a slot receiver again. So now I'm like, now what's my thought process? Speed. Oh, shit. I got to be able to fly, dude. So I went from I left Sacred Heart at, I want to say 181. And I went down to 168 in a summer. And I was flying, but shit, I sure as hell wasn't, my thought process was catching footballs and getting small, getting skinny and wiggle and pass people. I wasn't thinking about tackling people. Then when I had to switch roles and go to the defensive side of the ball, different thought process, right? But I don't know if I shocked the shit out of my body by drastically changing those weights throughout college. I could have never done that in high school. Absolutely not, right? Still growing and developing and doing all that.
You should try to just
be the best version of yourself, man.
Yeah.
If you're gonna, look,
they'll move you in college weight-wise, and hopefully as everyone continues to evolve, that they start. I think the key is it's not about at the college level. High school, I don't think you should. At college level, wherever you end up going, it's about optimization of performance. What's the right weight for what you have to accomplish, and what speed do you need at that weight to be able to accomplish it? So
and it's so different, right? Because these guys, you see these guys as sophomores, right? And what's the first thing they tell you? Coach, I got to put on weight so I can do this. I got to do this. Buddy, your body is still growing, developing. You know what I mean? Just let it happen Okay. And then you start to figure it out as you go. Now, look, are there some obese kids that come in and we're like, buddy, we got to cut some of this stuff?
Absolutely.
Like, but look, you're not thinking like, hey, dude, we need to cut 40 pounds off a high schooler. Like that. Come on, man. Like we need to be healthy about this and go about it in the right way. And I think it takes care of itself as long as, and Coach mentioned it, like you got to have a set plan in place, right? Like how many times we laugh when guys are like, you're like, what's the practice plan? Oh, we're going to this, well, where is it? Like, I need to see it. Everything needs to be calculated out. Some of these guys that are just like, hey, we're doing this workout. Well, why? Like, you're trying to do, you're trying to be a air raid spread team, yet you're training this way. It all needs to correlate and line up so that you can get maximum out of everything,
Yep, there's no doubt.
Coach was excellent, man.
He
gave us a little props for Jersey. We're not as good as Jersey football. Like, hey, settle down, Coach. We're like, it's all good, buddy. Settle down. I don't know. You could come down here and you can coach too, Coach. Like, we're all good. But thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Made me feel good about ourselves, because everybody's hammering on us for being Jersey guys. Like, okay.
I know. All right. So till tomorrow. No, tomorrow. Wednesday?
Thursday we have Jeff Moore from what I think he is where Coach Moore is Tabor Academy, so we're going back to Connecticut. So he's the head coach at Tabor Academy up in Connecticut.
Tabor, Connecticut, or is it Rhode Island?
It might be, I could have swore it was Massachusetts.
Oh, Massachusetts Tabors. Okay, cool.
Tabor Academy, the school by the sea. Independent, co-educational, college preparatory,
beautiful
day
school.
And boarding school, buddy. So those Massachusetts school ties.